What up, everybody? This is for the YouTube video. Okay, so you guys gotta give me a minute. I am currently ignoring chat and welcoming everybody in the YouTube world to this fantastical Righteous Fire Inquisitor build diary. A build that nobody's ever seen before. A build that is super interesting and very poggers. A lot of people have been asking questions about how do I level and play the character video game. And this video will cover all of your needs. It's not a build guide, it's going to be a build diary. So I'm more so going to be talking about specifically where my character's at right now. About 2 days into the league, unfortunately I had to remake the character because my initial one at level 90, rank 5 on the ladder, died to a game crash. So that really sucked. But the character was strong enough and there's so much potential in the different items and combinations of things that I figured I didn't really get to play the build. Might as well try it now, and it's been going great. Much of this character has been inspired by the one and only Pox. So if you want very concrete information, very good information about Righteous Fire and damage over time builds in general, Pox is your man, as you can tell from my name. Pox my ass. My previous character, no Pox given. Heavily inspired, but considering that we are playing Soul Self on hardcore, despite the skill tree being pretty similar so far, with a couple differences, primarily having a bunch more life, the itemization overall should be quite different. But real quick, let's explain how do you even scale damage of Righteous Fire, because it's gone through some buffs, and it's gone through some changes, and it's gone through some nerfs in the recent patch. You've got Elemental Overload that doesn't work at all with Righteous Fire, and this was a pretty huge deal. And then you also had the Elemental Equilibrium that got moved away and changed the exposure, which is also a really big deal. This overall results, in my opinion, in a buff because they've cranked up the numbers on Righteous Fire to insanity. So now your damage is as high as it was before, and you can increase it even more with the new gear pieces. But you don't have to enable that damage through something like a Stormbrand, proccing your EE, proccing your EO. You don't have to worry about that at all. Also, when it comes to the maximum life and maximum energy shield values, scaling your damage, that has also been increased. So the more EHP you have, the more powerful your Righteous Fire is going to be, on top of having a higher base damage. And the way you got to scale it is exactly that. HP, energy shield for that base damage, gem levels for that base damage. So fire, gem level increases. And then anything that is burning damage, not ignite damage, but burning damage. Ignite damage does not work. Righteous Fire is not an ignite, it is a burn. So fire damage also helps. Burn damage, like mentioned previously. Not spell damage. Spell damage doesn't help because it's not a spell, but it is. But spell damage doesn't work. Path of Exile things. And then damage over time. Any form of damage over time, really. So fire damage over time, generic damage over time will absolutely work for your Righteous Fire. So I ended up with a little bit of a wonky setup. As you can see, my auras right now are Purity of Fire, which you don't have to worry about initially. I think it's a lot better once you level up. Mine is only +3 max. Eventually, we're going to be having +5 max. I'm running Skitterbots. This is a question that comes up a lot too. Why Skitterbots? It's because shock and chill from these is super good for both defense and offense. Then I'm running Determination, which is completely busted this league. Gives us a ton of armor. Currently, my character, despite having a ton of energy shield gear and really only a single armor piece, is running 18.6k armor, which if you were to compare to old armor, that's about 30,000 armor just by default. And then also, if I turn on my Granite, I get just about 30k armor as well. Or excuse me, I also run Dread Banner. Totally forgot about it. Defiance Banner. You don't want to run anything else. Dread Banner sucks. First skill gems, I run Skitterbots, Armageddon Brand, and Combustion. These aren't linked. The Combustion is linked to the Armageddon Brand. This is for the purpose of igniting with it and reducing the amount of resistance that mobs have by 10%. Honestly, I might just replace this with Frost Shield. We've got Second Wind, Enduring Cry, Infernal Cry. Infernal Cry, higher single target, gives us big pops for harvest and whatnot. Super duper useful. Enduring Cry is regeneration, so it counts for our energy shield with our Inquisitor. Then the previously mentioned Defiance banner. We have Flame Dash, Flammability, and Life Tap. You gotta run Life Tap, otherwise you're gonna be running out of mana. And Life Tap is also going to be important for our 6th link. Then we've got Righteous Fire with Elemental Focus, Burning Damage, Efficacy, and increased area of effect that we switch out for Conk effect for single target. Now, this is super duper important, okay? People keep asking, why do you run Efficacy and not, I think it's Swift Affliction is what it's called? It's because Swift Affliction doesn't work. You have to run Life Tap to give your Righteous Fire the duration tag, and that way you're going to be able to run Swift Affliction. This is also the reason why Life Tap on the low level is super useful on your Flame Dash and your Flammability. But, however, until then, until we have a 6th link Efficacy, the 24% more damage is totally what you should be doing since it's higher than Life Tap, and Swift Affliction doesn't work. We've got Infused Channeling, Life Tap, Efficacy, and Scorching Ray. Same idea. We need the Life Tap. It also is a nice damage increase. So remember that Infused Channeling juices up our Scorching Ray and our Righteous Fire. And then Scorching Ray is massive because a lot of people are asking, why am I not using Wave of Conviction? Well, Scorching Ray, when the maximum amount of stacks is applied to the mob, the 8 stages, it gives us a 25% reduction in enemy fire resistance through the exposure, which is the exact same effect as Wave of Conviction. Those don't stack. You can only have one highest effect, and I just find that Scorching Ray is by far the best way to do it. You can use this with a Delirium Gloves, or you can use it with Warlord Boots with +2 to fire damage if you want. Scorching Ray is a pretty substantial amount of damage, but you're not always applying it, so you got to make a tanky character that's going to allow you to face tank, so you can use that Scorching Ray for juicing. And then we've got Determination and Purity of Fire. Obviously, it doesn't matter if they're linked. And then a Molten Shell and Cast when Damage Taken. I like running Molten Shell on Cast when Damage Taken, and then whenever I need the big Molten Shell, I simply pop my Vol Molten Shell, and that way I have a lot of control. I know that I'm going to be getting hit by a lot of damage, but then also when some surprise damage happens, like for instance from Scourge, my Molten Shell can automatically pop and protect me from all those dangerous mobs. If you want to run Shield Charge, do it. I don't know how you're going to fit it in, but do it. I'm currently trying to fit in Frost Shield. It hasn't worked out. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be removing. Maybe the Second Wind? I'm not sure. Maybe to get 2 sockets? I'm going to get rid of the Armageddon brand. Not sure. Frost Shield, super strong. Shield Charge, super strong. What about the Bandits? The Bandits are simple as well. You kill everybody. No reason to do anything else. I guess if you want to be really sustainy, you could help Oak for the regeneration, but I think the passive points are just more valuable. We can discuss the powers of this build as well, because it is very unique. I guess it's not that unique in the current Path of Exile, but if you were to compare it to builds previously in the game, it's practically immune to everything. So you can very easily gain immunity to all ailments. However, I'm running a different setup that I'm going to be explaining in just a minute. But we do have 75% resistance to curses, or reduced effect of curses, because Consecrated Path, or Consecrated Ground, excuse me, gives you resistance to curses, 50%, and we have 50% increased effect of Consecrated Ground you create, which gives us 75. If you want to crank that up even more, you can get 30% on gear, or you can pick up the Mastery on the skill tree for armor and energy shield, and this actually gives you 20% reduced effect of curses on you, which puts you up to 95. Honestly, the only curse that you have to worry about nowadays in Path of Exile is vulnerability, so that's totally up to you. I've been running 75 and have had absolutely 0 problems. When it comes to the stun immunity, you can also itemize that. It's available on a tremendous amount of pieces. If you're super lazy, you can use Scorn Essences to get that too. I personally recommend just picking up Unwavering Stance. I know it's 2 points, but it is 0 downside for our build as we only scale with armor. And the stun immunity is really helpful. Despite the amount of energy shield and HP that we have, you still might get stunned in some situations. So I think especially for hardcore, it is absolutely worth it, since you might also path to the Scion Life. But that's totally going to be up to you. I suppose if we do get into the immunities, there are two approaches in my eyes. One, get Purity of Elements. I mean, Purity of Elements, super duper simple. Gives you just immunity to all elements, and you don't have to worry about anything. So how do I achieve this? How do I not die to ailments? We have many options. You can also itemize that, but the way I'm doing it right now is I run Soul of Garkan. This is a recently changed Pantheon, which gives you 60% reduced effect of shock on you. And then all you got to do is craft 40% reduced effect of chill and shock on you. This has a roll, so it might be a little bit annoying, but obviously you don't need 100% immediately. And funny fact as well, that the reduced effect actually affects ground effects as well, which it previously didn't. If there was shock ground, you would be fully affected by it. It no longer does that, and you have a nice little cool display on the debuff section that shows you that despite the fact that you are shocked, you're shocked for 0. Freeze, crafted on boots. That's it. You can run Arctic Armor if you want instead of one of these other things, but honestly, I think crafting it on boots on the prefix is a lot more valuable. Yeah, that's what I recommend. When it comes to the chill, honestly, you don't get chilled that much, and if you do, you don't really get affected by it whatsoever, because one, you have a lot of HP, so again, the chills are very, very tiny. 2, we have 40% reduced effect from the gloves. And 3, even if we are chilled most of the time, the mobs that are capable of chilling you are the big bosses that we just stand on top of, don't move. And the reduction in cast speed or attack speed doesn't do anything to us, doesn't do anything to our Righteous Fire damage or Scorching damage. I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot. And when it comes to the Ignite, you kind of want to get ignited. You may, I mean, we have a lot of fire resistance, and you can even crank this up to about 90 with a Rise of the Phoenix. I currently only have 83, but I'm looking to increase this number. On my previous character, I was rocking a Sappho's Frame, which gave me a large amount, but that's in standard now. So, and the reason why you kind of want to get ignited is because those ignites aren't going to be particularly painful in any scenario. But since we're running Soul of Arakali on our Pantheon, the 20% increased recovery rate of life and energy shield if you've stopped taking damage over time recently could be great. I mean, we're generating a ton. It could potentially come into play. And I guess that brings us to our Pantheons. The Capture Spinner of Hope, of False Hope, is also very helpful. But the primary reason why we're running Soul of Arakali is the 10% reduced damage taken from over time. And that obviously cranks up the amount of mitigation that we get for our Righteous Fire damage. And then previously mentioned the Soul of Garukan. There's a couple of other options, especially if you're running the Purity. You can run Soul of Tokuhama. I find that that's a pretty valuable one. Once again, another super frequently asked question is, how do you level this? We talked about how you switch to Righteous Fire when you get Cruel Lab, but how do you get there? And there's a multitude of different ways. The standard leveling with Stormblast Mine and Frost Bomb and switching into Armageddon brand. You could do that, but it is not as good as the recently discovered by yours truly most powerful leveling in the entire game for anything long neck Templar caster man and person. It is picking up Runesmith early on, picking up Runebinder early on, and getting the brand mastery with brands attached to a new enemy each time they activate, no more than once every 0.3 second. And the skill that you use this with is, you guessed it right, Wintertide brand. Super powerful leveling combo. This is because Wintertide brand is an ability that normally doesn't have access to its end debuff. However, anytime it switches to another enemy, it activates that debuff. So it gives you a ton of AoE early on. It gives you a ton of chill. It's great damage. However, there are a couple things that you have to take care of. You will have to most likely travel to the other brand mastery for brand equity. Increasing the amount of brands that you have is super valuable, so that anytime your brand expires, as it stores damage per brand, you can replace with another brand. And your skill tree would be something super duper simple in the early stages. I can give you even an example. I'm sure Anya's gonna put it in the video, so it makes it easy for anybody. You pick up damage notes, that's great for leveling. You go through amplify, that's great. You really want the brand skills have increased duration, because that extends the lifespan of your Wintertide, meaning that it's going to be doing more and more damage until it reaches those 20 stages, which you're never going to reach, but don't worry about that. And then we get Runesmith, we get Runebinder, and that previously mentioned node here. At which point you can really do whatever. Again, if you want to be really cheeky, you can pick up these nodes and go over here for this damage right here. You could also travel up here and immediately pick up these nodes over here with brand equity, and then get the mastery either for even 2 more additional brands or the 40% increased brand attachment range. That's totally up to you. I highly recommend getting the additional brands. And once you reach the Cruel Lab, you're going to be about level 55, maybe level 50. You're going to be unspecking all of this, but our skill tree is pretty similar anyway to what we're going to want. So this is just about what I would expect it's going to look like for you. Make sure to unspec these nodes. You pick up this over here. This one's going to be super high value for you. You're going to have Hardy and you're going to have Barbarism. And honestly, even though this is only 44 points, you're still going to be able to sustain your Righteous Fire. You're going to have no problems. You want to be picking up Holy Fire over here. And you maybe want to be traveling over here if you feel like your damage is insufficient, which it shouldn't be. At which point, to pick up more defense, as it can be a little bit tricky if you don't have that initial gear, travel down here. You pick up Prismatic Skin, you get your nice regeneration, and you keep going with the build. At this stage in the game, I believe that you're going to have a firm grasp as to what you are in need of. Do you need more regeneration, more sustain, maybe a little bit more defense? You can definitely choose what to go for. Make sure to get armor, use that determination to high value. Why not any of the other ascendancies? And that's because they are all trash. Inquisitor is the long neck master race, is the best ever, but in reality it's about Pious Path. So as you can see, Inquisitor gives you effects of Consecrated Ground. You create Linger for 4 seconds, which we are creating them with Sanctuary, and then also Consecrated Ground you create causes life regeneration to also recover energy shield for you and your allies. And as much as this build isn't much of a hybrid build so far, it will be in the future. I'm not gonna have as much energy shield as life, but I will have a substantial amount, and this node essentially doubles our regeneration, and the damage received we're going to be eventually splitting with a Corrupted Soul from a Glorious Vanity Timeless Jewel or a Replica Soul Tether, which I am currently hard at work to farm. The other ascendancies, they're solid options too. I think Elementalist is pretty good if you want to do a lot of damage, but obviously keep in mind that without that additional regeneration, you're going to have to invest more into your sustain. But if you're fine with smaller amounts of sustain, I think it's a pretty good option. There's a lot of gearing that you can do currently with the new patch. You can get 60% recovery rate on your gear, 20% on the head, gloves, and boots piece. So it's not that difficult, and Elementalist definitely offers a lot of damage, but again, I prefer the more balanced approach of a lot of regen and a lot of hybridy defenses from Inquisitor. Chieftain, more or less the same idea, a little bit tankier but a little bit less damage. A solid option, definitely fits our skill tree. Totally up to you if you want to do that, but I would much rather not. It does also offer a little bit of utility. You've got like Chance to Ignite and some more situational regeneration that might come in handy. Obviously stuff like the Salio is super powerful, and it also has, I believe, no, it doesn't have armor. but armor is very strong and it's one of the primary defenses of this build. And then you've got Trickster. Don't play Trickster, okay? I know, you probably watched some YouTube video and you're like, wow, Trickster's super crazy poggers. No, it ain't, all right? Just don't. There's no reason to do it. I don't think the Ascendancy itself is that bad at all for this. I think Heartstopper is pretty interesting for situations where it might eventually come into play, but in my eyes, the skill tree just doesn't fit the build overall. It messes too much with the principles of it. On Trade League, you can absolutely make it work. Any of these ascendancies are good enough to get through the entirety of the game, but if you're looking to min-max for myself, especially for SSF, Inquisitor is the way. We have another question. When do I go RF? With Inquisitor, that's a huge advantage. You don't have to itemize at all. All you got to do is your Crow Lab. You pick up Pious Path, and instantly you're going to be able to run Righteous Fire. There are new nodes on the skill tree, such as Hardy, which increases life regeneration rate. You've got Prismatic Skin, which you're probably not going to have at that stage in the game, but Prismatic Skin is super good if you want a little bit more regeneration. Same for the maximum fire resistance here. But really, if you don't want to pick up any of those things, and if you want to level quickly, get the damage over time mastery from Acrimony, and that alone with Pious Path should be enough. The life mastery node that gives you regeneration while moving is also super duper effective. Very much worthwhile. What Uber Lab do we get on this build? Righteous Providence is our best option. I mean, you can pick up a small node as well. So you can pick up the 10% elemental damage, but honestly, you still get energy shield from here. Strength is life, and that's the best that you can do. So this build is so good, it doesn't even need Uber Lab. I totally forgot about mine and picked it up super late. I believe like level 91, so don't worry about it too much. Now, the most important part of this build diary that everybody always asks about. How good is Divine Shield? Honestly, guys, it's not that good. The newly buffed armor is crazy good, super high value, but Divine Shield, the 3% of physical damage prevented from hits recently is regenerated as an energy shield per second. I can see it being more valuable later on, but not so much so far. Maybe if I have a higher pool of energy shield, it's definitely worth the singular point, but it's not the sort of thing that you're going to be building your entire character around.